This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Spring-Heeled Jack Coffee. You need great coffee. Jack delivers. Visit springhieldjack.coffee.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/frightday.
It's Frightday. I'm your host, Byron, and before we get to my horrific nightmare of a tale from Camp Frightday, I just want to pop in with Kelly.
With me?
You didn't say anything. So.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm here. I'm definitely here.
She's here as well. I want to talk to you real quick about something called wisdom.
Something that I have that I've been trying to instill.
Not copy, Kelly.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm
really
sorry.
Wisdom, though, a new app we are going to be trying out. Wisdom.audio is a great way to get it. You know, there's lots of ways to describe it, but this one stood out to me like a TED Talk with audience participation.
A masterclass, but with people that are closer to you than
a more intimate
superhero
masterclass.
Celebrities. I think there are quite a few podcasters participating in this. And so the idea of podcasting and logistics of that, while Byron is an expert, that's something you're probably going to be able to hear elsewhere. So this is going to sound a little bit ironic coming from somebody who's known as Captain Kelly with Conspiracies and Cryptids segment. But one thing that we both have in common is enjoyment for things that are goofy, but also a deep respect for actual facts. What's been interesting for both of us to navigate, though we don't necessarily talk about it a lot, is how do you research and do some type of an entertainment discussion on topics that can be very goofy while actually caring about truth, portraying and researching things in a way that isn't buying into the social trend. Well, it's up to interpretation. There's a lot of information from a lot of angles, and it's important to figure out how to sort through the bullshit and find the stuff that you really feel comfortable hanging your hat on.
While not being boring.
Right, but not buying into the...
sensationalized.
And it's a very thin line, but I think it's something that we can discuss. We've got a lot of experience, and I would say over the last couple of years, we've both become increasingly serious about that loyalty to truth and rationality.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a wisdom talk about that.
Yeah?
Wednesday, December 29th at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Check out our profile now. Follow us there. It's joinwisdom.audio/frightday. Wednesday, December 29th, 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we'll see you there. But now, it's time for me to ruin...
On to the show.
Time for me to ruin your night.
Oh no, what are you doing now?
We're going to listen to a little tale of a man named Ronald Gene Simmons.
Oh no, you're doing that to them?
Yeah.
Right now?
Merry Christmas.
No, don't play this before Christmas.
Well, that might be right after.
Fire emergency.
Please don't talk, just listen. I'm sorry.
They found the bodies of at least 3 young boys, 6 more bodies under the John Gacy house. And
One longtime acquaintance describes Dahmer as one weird dude.
Stay tuned for Byron's Serial Corner.
Monday, December 28th, 1987. The most useless Monday of the year. Smack dab between Christmas and New Year's. Who are you kidding? No one's doing real work, right, Kelly? Just bodies passing time. Wait, you do real work between Christmas and New Year's? Bullshit.
All of my students have January 1st deadlines. Of course I do work between Christmas and New Year's, you lazy shit.
A car parked in front of the offices of Peel, Eddy & Gibbons, a law firm in the town of Russettville, the largest city in Pope County, Arkansas, as well as one of the filming locations for the independent Christian film Cowboys and Jesus. A man with a long white beard, less biblical, more Santa, or a doomsday prepper, pushed the door open and walked directly to the receptionist desk where Kathy Kendrick was seated. Even beyond an uncharacteristic straw cowboy hat, she recognized the man, but before she had the chance to say a word, he raised a .22 caliber pistol and pulled the trigger. Lawyers and secretaries froze at the sound of the shot, some considering that it may be a new noisy Christmas toy that a child was playing with, but not confident enough to check until a few moments passed. Once the man left, a client waiting to be seen in the lobby started screaming. He shot her! He shot her! She'd seen everything. Kathy sat slumped in her office chair, blood spilling from a wound in the back of her head. She was dead by the time an ambulance arrived. Things were slightly less controlled as the man arrived at the Taylor Oil Company. Fearing word of his first shooting had spread, he exited the car prepared. This time the gun was in his hand, now wearing a ball cap. A very lazy costume change, but I guess it would work in a pinch. He began firing immediately upon entering the building. A trucker, who just so happened to also be a volunteer fireman, his name was J.D. Chaffin, was gunned down. He wasn't the intended target. That would be the owner of a couple businesses, Taylor Oil and a Sinclair Mini Mart, a man named Rusty Taylor, full first name Russell. No, the town wasn't named after him, but it would be pretty fun to live in Byronville, population me. Right, Kelly? Where'd you go? Kelly disappeared. Ran her off. Seeing the body of J.D. on the ground, a woman named Julie Money. She had wandered out of a restroom. She was a bookkeeper, and her presence distracted the shooter. She froze long enough for the man to walk right up to her, placing the barrel of his gun to her head. But right before she pulled the trigger,
Byron, hold on just a second.
What's going on?
Puck wants to come say hi really quickly, so you need to stop talking about what you're saying.
Hi, Puck. Wow. All right.
See, look, those are all of our friends. Look at our friends over here. Can you see? See, they're all waving.
All right.
Look at how nice they are. They're not scary like Uncle Byron. They're
I'm not
nice.
Scary. I'm a good guy.
Very nice, except for that one. That one likes bad movies.
All right.
That one right there is waving. He doesn't like good movies. That one right there, he's really nice. He got a really awesome tattoo. These ones have puppy dogs. And this one makes the coolest art you've ever seen in your life. You would not believe what she makes. Look at, she's going to show you. She's going to show you what she makes. Look at what she made. Look at that fox. That fox head. Is that not? She made that all by herself from scratch. How cool is that? Amazing, huh? Okay, now Byron's going to talk about scary things, so you got to go away. You can take a cookie. I love you. Bye, Trash Panda.
Bye, Trash Panda.
Go to bed, Trash Panda. We love you.
Don't leave again. I need you here, Kelly. You need to hear the story.
Okay.
Thank you. We were talking about Julie Money. She wandered out of the restroom, and this shooter pulled a gun up to her head. But guess what, Kelly? Right before he pulled the trigger, she snapped out of a trance and yelled no and attempted to jump out of the way. She didn't. She
died, right?
No, she was successful. She just lost some hair. It burnt the hair on the side of her head, which is very lucky. The attacker didn't know that, though. She played dead, and he fled, shooting wildly on his way out. Thankfully not hitting anyone. The ambulance arrived in time to save Russell's life, actually. So, could have been a lot worse there. But a few minutes later, at the Sinclair Mini Mart, a man with a freshly swapped hat briskly walked in the door, directly to the counter, shooting Rebecca Woolry without hesitation squarely in the chest. Hearing the bang from the back room, the store's manager, a guy named David Salyer, saw the man spin around towards him, and with only a second to react, he threw a chair in his direction, causing the man to miss his mark slightly. He fired, striking David, knocking him to the ground. But this convenience store was well-staffed that day, even for a Monday between Christmas and New Year's, Kelly. It's a boring Monday that no one needs to be working during. Take the whole week off. Bill Mason, who had been stocking shelves, started pelting the shooter with full cans of soda, like that beverage machine in Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive, or Tom during that Safe Room episode of Secession. It's kind of fun. This was enough to run the man out of the store, and it may have been the thing that kept Rebecca and David from death. But this maniac wasn't done quite yet. Although the town was sparking with chaos, Woodline Motor Freight didn't know what was headed for them. Surprisingly still calm, the man entered. I don't know his hat situation, but he walked through the offices, ignoring the faces he passed, even ones who recognized him. In one of the back offices, he found who he was looking for, Joyce Butts. He, for the last time, raised his gun and without a word exchanged, shot Miss Butts twice. Once in the chest and once in the head. Joyce somehow survived. But he didn't know that. Following her shooting, the man locked himself in an office with a young woman, one of his old co-workers, a woman named Vicky Jackson. Something in him had changed. He put both his guns on the table and told her to call the police, saying, quote, "I've come to do what I wanted to do. It's all over now. I've gotten everybody who wanted to hurt me." Vicky made the call, and while he waited for them to arrive, the two had a couple of minutes of small talk. How was your Christmas? Comments about the weather, stuff like that. He asked why she hadn't ever came to visit him when he worked at the mini-mart. They smoked cigarettes and waited. So this hostage was just to ensure that he didn't get into a gun battle. It's not that he didn't want to die, but as a veteran, he'd seen too many people end up paralyzed or in a vegetative state, and this was the last thing he wanted. He didn't want to lose control. The one thing Ronald Gene Simmons had focused on his entire life. After negotiating his arrest, he walked out, gave his guns to the officers, and was searched, and immediately was cuffed and placed in a van headed to the station. At this point, he had only been arrested for the attempted murder of Joyce, but as he sat, the phones started ringing. Each time, when asked if he was responsible for an instance of chaos, he would silently nod. And after the report stopped, the death threats started. Both elaborate and blunt, it was enough that they knew they needed to get Ronald out of town, or they were concerned that the jail would be attacked by the townsfolk. They may just string him up themselves for what he did. It wasn't until his transfer south to the Arkansas State Hospital later that night that they would get a hint at just how heinous this man was. Quite the recluse, only one officer recognized the man, recalling Ronald had quite the large family. He leaned in and asked, "You've got a family up there on Mockingbird Hill. Are they doing all right?" Still silent, his lips started to quiver. His eyes watered, almost forming a tear. But what police would find over the next few days on Mockingbird Hill would cause horrified and sickening shockwaves. All right, folks. Last Camp Frightday, I talked about the Camp Scott murders, the story of the brutal death of several Girl Scouts on a camping trip.
Did you tell everyone that it turned out that that guy we interviewed actually was an investigator on that case?
No, we didn't really get the chance to talk much about that. Harvey. Was it Harvey Pratt? Is that right? Harvey Pratt, I used a clip of his interview from a documentary on the Camp Scott murders in that episode, and we ended up talking to him. Kelly did. More the Bigfoot side of what he does, but that was very interesting. One thing really stood out. A lot of people reacted negatively to me recalling the loss of the Wonder Dogs, a group of dogs that were used to help in the search, who died tragically and mysteriously in that episode. I apologize for bringing it back up, but I want to assure you that in this story, the dog was treated better than anyone else in the Simmons family. According to Ronald, he was the only true loyal member. But who the heck is Ronald Gene Simmons, you guys? Born on a hot summer day in Chicago in 1940 to Loretta and William Simmons, things were relatively unremarkable until his father died of a stroke when Ronald was just a little less than 3 years old, which certainly is a bummer. Loretta was now raising her son without economic stability, But don't worry, she soon found another William to wed, William D. Griffin, who served in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Family 2.0 packed up their life in Chicago and moved to the land of opportunity, the natural state, Arkansas. As anyone who's been part of a military family could relate, they never stay in a place too long, bouncing from place to place. And while this can help some make friends quickly and more easily, I was always impressed with the cool kids who moved in mid-year. Ronald wasn't so lucky. His social skills and education suffered due to his bouncing around, and he gained a reputation as a bully, a violent one. Until Ronald turned 16, they did this, and at that point, his mother and William, the second William, sent him off to military school. Clear goals, clear hierarchy, peace, and purpose, he thrived in this structured environment. Every moment of his day was scheduled and full. Like a child not wanting to leave Dave & Buster's, he threw a fit when his time there was up. At 17, Ronald dropped out of high school, cut ties with his entire family, and joined the U.S. Navy. The first post was Bremerton Naval Base in Washington, just across the bay from Seattle, and it was there that he met a young woman named Betsy Rebecca Hulabiari. She obviously went by Becky. The two hit it off, but even early in the relationship, his controlling behavior was present. Things like how she did the dishes or other little mistakes. He was always looking over her shoulder, not being physical, but always letting her know that she wasn't meeting his standards. He made her dress down, because it was practical, and this was early in their relationship. Things only got worse. Ronald was deployed to New Mexico. Becky followed, and they were married a few days before his 20th birthday. More domination followed the vows as Ronald found new ways to break down Becky, including forcing her to sever ties with her family. He couldn't tolerate abandonment, so he would destroy all confidence that she had left. He needed her to need him. And for the next few years, they continued down that path. A year into their marriage, Becky gave birth to their first child, a boy named Ronald Gene Simmons Jr. He went by Gene. You know any genes, Kelly? She's nodding. Good genes? Are you crying already? It's going to get a lot worse. 2 years later, Sheila Marie Simmons came into the world. This was a rather turbulent time in the Simmons family, as Ronald had recently been discharged from the Navy, but he had something new to focus on. He quickly took a shining to Sheila. He also couldn't survive outside of enrollment and quickly joined the Air Force. Ronald and Becky would have 5 more children: William, Loretta, Eddie, Marianne, and Rebecca Lynn. As soon as they could stand, the breaking down would begin. Orderly tasks assigned, and I'm not talking taking the garbage out. This was inarguably abusive. He was using these tasks to test their loyalty to him, and the ones that weren't loyal were punished. But as time moved on, he found himself further drawn to his oldest daughter, Sheila, the apple of his eye. By the time she turned 13, other folks started catching on to just how wrong their relationship was. One year at his sister-in-law's Christmas dinner, the then 15-year-old ended up on Ronald's lap. He was having a rough night, so she kissed him on the lips. Everyone, except the immediate family, squirmed in their chairs as he smiled. To the Simmons, this was normal. Ronald was a monster of a person, but a wonderful soldier, serving 22 years, retiring at the rank of Master Sergeant in 1979, moving to the town of Cloudcroft, New Mexico. But they wouldn't be there long. The already tortured Becky was forced to sit back and watch Ronald's relationship with his own daughter grow more and more romantic. You doing okay, Kelly? You look very distraught.
She was not forced to sit back and do it. She was in a shitty position, but she could have kept that from happening.
I don't know.
I don't like it. You don't run away for a while.
No, you got to stick around. This was a really terrible situation that she was in. One example at this time, it was a shopping trip where Becky was actually told to sit in the back seat of the car while they drove to the grocery store, and Sheila and her father would laugh and hold hands. And, Becky, she was disgusted, embarrassed, and felt helpless. But things only got worse. When at 17 years old, Sheila became pregnant by her father. This was too much for the oldest son, Gene, feeling the police wouldn't do anything, and maybe they wouldn't have done enough. You'll find out. He reported her pregnancy anonymously to her school counselor. She tried to deny the pregnancy, but after several meetings, it all came flooding out. Criminal charges were immediately filed, but Sheila still drug her feet. I mean, she'd been groomed from birth to think that she was in love, and that kind of love. And confronted with the potential shame, she hid from it. She was met with cruel hostility by Ronald. One letter that eventually surfaced from this time read, "You have destroyed me, and you have destroyed my trust in you. I will see you in hell." Gene took the opportunity to leave his family behind to start his own life. Even without Sheila's cooperation, the incest case moved forward, but it would never make it to court. Ronald suddenly uprooted his family and fled the state of New Mexico. The Simmons had vanished, and after a year of casually trying to figure out the situation, the case went cold. So much like the reason serial killers could so easily get away with things in the 80s, this was a time without interstate databases. If you hopped state lines, you can almost start over with a clean slate. During this time, Sheila gave birth to her and her father's daughter, Sylvia. The family bounced from rental property to rental property, almost like hermits in the town of Ward, Arkansas. One thing that Ronald did leave behind, making the choice to run, was his military pension. So he was now forced to work low-paying, under-the-table type jobs. They struggled for something like 2 years. At some points, they were evicted for not paying rent at all. I don't know how many times this happened, but the chaos and isolation further tortured the family, solidifying Ronald's control over them. Uprooting one last time, they found themselves 15 miles outside Dover, Arkansas, in a borderline abandoned lot, Mockingbird Hill. So much like the property of Byron David Smith, this was peppered with dozens of no trespassing signs. When you finally reach the house, well, it's not exactly a house. It was two old mobile homes welded together. I wrote down a DIY double wide with no indoor plumbing. During the first days on Mockingbird Hill, Ronald put his children to work. They stacked cinder blocks as high as they could reach, creating cement fences blocking the outside world almost completely. Basically, they were walling themselves in, a family prison. Then the cesspits needed to be dug, and this kind of comforted Ronald. It reminded him of his time deployed, concerned that there would be a repeat of the New Mexico situation. Ronald ensured that his children wouldn't stand out. They were to be clean, to be on time, good grades. There was never any signs of physical abuse, at least on the children. It's possible that he took it all out on his wife. She wasn't allowed at that period of time to leave without his permission, so he could very easily hide that. Seeing Gene get away, Sheila and some of the other children were snapping out of their father's control, possibly due to his confidence fading. You see, the town of Dover didn't have any substantial work for him. It was too small, and all the good jobs were already taken. So Ronald was forced to drive the 13 or so miles south to Russellville. However, the ingrained disrespect and resentment towards women that he'd been cultivating most of his life was going to be a problem. Despite having no real experience, Ronald managed to get a job as a clerk at a law firm. He was organized and had an eye for detail. By all accounts, his work was fast and quality. Kelly, you worked at a law firm, right? I feel like you might have, right? She's nodding at me. What are you eating? How can you eat at a time like this? I'm telling a horrible story.
Yeah, I'm trying to ignore it.
How's it going?
I worked for many years at a law firm.
Okay, very nice. Is it easy to get a clerk job?
As a clerk?
Yeah, at a law firm.
Clerks, there are clerks of court. Like, you can clerk for a judge. You don't clerk for a law firm.
I don't know exactly what he did. He probably just was a paper guy doing papers.
He's probably an asshole.
Well, that's for certain. He couldn't help but be the creep that he was. Ronald acted grossly inappropriate towards a young woman named Kathy Kendricks. This wasn't Jim and Pam stuff. It was lewd sexual advances, and she brought it up to her bosses. Ronald was soon forcefully unemployed. Back home, Becky, his wife, tried to leave. And I think this was actually the second time that she had tried to leave, but she always found herself coming back. He had completely convinced her that she was nothing without him. Despite his disgusting behavior, it only took a couple weeks until Ronald found a new gig, this time at a local oil company. But this didn't work out either. He was constantly arguing with his boss and other employees. The teenage bully in him was returning. When inappropriate behavior towards female coworkers started happening, they too cut him loose. During these employed periods, his children were gaining further independence, making friends, gaining confidence, and started dreaming of a world outside fences. You know, they were really happy when he found another job as a clerk at the Woodline Motor Freight Company, so they would have more free time. And having fucked up twice for unwanted advances, he decided to make extra sure that that wouldn't happen again. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't be his views on women that would bring about his termination. Ronald just couldn't handle having Joyce Elaine Butts as his supervisor. He would constantly go over her head, working with the owner directly, and when Joyce discovered that he was still harassing the much younger than him, Kathy, from the law firm, and when I say much younger, she was 30 years younger than Ronald at this point. He was sending her flowers, creepy stuff like that, and then he was once again fired. And this further fueled his hatred of women. The last gig that Ronald ever had was working behind the counter of the Sinclair gas station. And here he got along with some of his coworkers, especially one vet like himself, but he hated the job. Low pay, disrespect, and more hassle than the ones that he had before. Some days he would work late, even though he wasn't getting paid for it, just to straighten up and do things right. He was very good at meticulously stocking shelves. About this time, Sheila's secret boyfriend, a guy named Dennis McNulty, decided that he wanted to marry her. He had heard some pretty awful things about Ronald, but she told him everything, actually, but he still felt like he should ask permission for her hand. This didn't go well, but it didn't matter. By the time the men had a conversation, Sheila and her daughter had already moved their stuff into Dennis's apartment. Ronald was further losing control. He quit his convenience store job, not with an angry blow-up like before, but with indifference. He seemingly gave up. Something in him had changed, and he took to drinking beer in his room all day. His wife Becky had finally found the courage to leave and stay away, which it wasn't an easy decision for her, but she wanted to do it right this time. It really took a toll on her. She had been tortured, plus the guilt of allowing Ronald to treat her children the way that he did. But before she left, she wanted one last family Christmas. Planning began Invites were sent to the kids that had left, and surprisingly, they all agreed to show up. But Ronald had different plans. While other families were at the local Walmart buying loved ones' presents, Ronald purchased a new .22 caliber pistol, then picked out a Christmas tree and went home. December 22nd, 1987, Ronald began sharing his horrifying holiday plan with his family. Walking into his door with a crowbar hiding behind his leg, his oldest son, Gene, approached, backing out of the room where he had just put down his daughter for a nap. Kelly, you can go ahead and mute me for a bit, but turn on your video so I can wave at you when I need you back. Ronald swung, striking Gene in the center of his forehead, but this isn't a Home Alone movie. Gene fell to his knees, mouth hanging open, eyes crossed, gasping and drooling. Ronald hit his son 2 more times in the face, hard, breaking his nose in and killing him. Just to make sure, he stomped hard on his midsection, forcing all remaining air out. Hearing the noise, Becky left the kitchen to investigate. She was met with a blow from Ronald's crowbar, but unlike with Gene, these were body shots. He wanted her to suffer. After a handful of rib-breaking hits, he rotated the crowbar, teeth side out, and tore into her. Ronald drew his pistol and shot his wife and his son in the head, just to make sure that they were dead. Then he heard little Barb crying. Just 3 years old, he entered the room and strangled the girl to death. Taking a break to catch his breath, Ronald watched TV and cracked open a cold one. He had more work to do. Outside, he pulled the corner of a tarp up, and this had been covering the third cesspit that he had forced his family to dig before the ground froze. There he placed the bodies of his first 3 victims. Barb was lowered down in a garbage bag because she had soiled herself during the murder. He splashed them with kerosene to keep the animals and his dog away and went inside. Ronald cleaned the blood off the floor, kind of like he did in his old Navy days, swabbing the ship's deck. Then he sat down in his chair and waited for his other children to come home from school. He met them at the bus, which was unexpected and unnerving. They were rushed through the door directly to their rooms, possibly told that their mother had some surprises, early presents, for them. Then one by one, the children were taken outside, past the tarp-covered pit where the bodies of their family were. Loretta first. She was led to a water barrel at the rear of the building. Ronald grabbed her by the hair and shoved her face through the layer of ice atop it. The shock of the cold likely sped up the drowning process, but him pushing his full weight down on her neck most certainly killed her. She was taken to the pit. Then, one by one, he killed the rest. Eddie, Marianne, the same way. But Becky manually strangled above the hole and then dropped in. More kerosene was tossed on the pit full of his family, and barbed wire was stretched over them to further ensure that they stayed there. He didn't want animals dragging them out. Now the waiting began. It would be a few days until the remaining members of his family would be headed his way, so Ronald passed the time in his chair, enjoying the quiet. Drinking beer in front of the TV, he celebrated Christmas by himself. December 26th, he had staggered the arrival of his remaining family. Billy, his wife, Renetta, and their 20-month-old baby, Trey, were scheduled to arrive at noon. They drove up a few minutes late, which likely irritated Ronald. Hearing their arrival, he met them at the door. Billy walked up first, with his wife carrying his son behind him. Ronald raised his gun and fired a shot into his son's chest. The bullet entered straight through his heart and bounced around inside of his rib cage, ripping him up. That's the awful thing about .22 caliber bullets. It killed him quickly. His horrified wife rushed to his side, trying to help. But then she was shot in the head. Trey was picked up by Ronald, flipped upside down, held by his ankles, and dipped into the water barrel. With a bit of time before Sheila, Dennis, and his kid and her kid arrived, these bodies were drug inside of the DIY double-wide, lined up in a row on the living room floor. Their coats were taken off and laid over their faces, and again, Ronald waited. After a few more beers and a few more minutes in front of the TV, the sound of another car arrived, stirring him. Sheila Dennis and her children were met at the door and invited in. This was the first time that he'd seen his daughter in years. It was also her last moments alive. The family froze at the sight of the bodies laid out on the floor. Dennis was shot in the chest. Sheila was killed as well after one shot, but out of rage, the entire gun was emptied into her. 21-month-old Michael was strangled like the other younger children, and finally, his daughter and granddaughter, Sylvia, was choked to death. The Simmons family was added to the pit, Dennis to the living room. The once apple of his eye was placed on the kitchen table and covered with a tablecloth, and her youngest son bagged up and placed in the trunk of his father's car, unworthy of being with the others. The same was done with Billy's kid. 14 lives taken between the 22nd and 26th. For a while, Ronald felt relieved. Kelly, are you listening? Are you back? She's just staring sadly at me. Can you hear? Hello? You can hear me? Okay.
Now I can.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just saying 14 lives were taken between the 22nd and 26th of December that year. And for a while, Ronald felt relieved. He even went to a local bar for the first time in a long time. He had some beers, celebrated his freedom, and laughed in a way that made even the most bar-y of flies uncomfortable. But the next day, the itch was still there. He let his dog out and thought, who else wronged him?
You said the dog wasn't going to die.
He's hanging out with the dog, figuring out who else wronged him. On the morning of the 28th,
the dog had.
Of course I wouldn't kill a dog. On the morning of the 28th, he returned to Walmart for more .22 caliber ammunition and made his way to his former places of employment. And you all know how that played out. Ronald was found to be mentally competent to stand trial for his crimes on the basis that he knew the difference between life and death, right and wrong. And from that moment on, he did whatever he could to move his case forward, pleading guilty and asking for the death penalty. He gave no justification for his actions, no excuses. The trial was broken into two, his family and the victims of his spree in Russellville. For the former, he received the death sentence by lethal injection and 147 years in prison. The second trial followed shortly, since there was not really a defense, but something interesting happened that certainly helped move the conviction along. The prosecution read a clumsily written letter that Ronald had penned to Sheila, that she had stored in a safe deposit box back in New Mexico. It detailed their relationship, and when it was read in court, it destroyed, it embarrassed Ronald. And in a blind rage, when the prosecution was done, he attacked the lawyer, punching him in the jaw. And when a deputy tried to intervene, Ronald actually reached for the deputy's gun. He didn't get it, but they dogpiled him and eventually carried him away, kicking and screaming. With little deliberation, he was convicted. death by lethal injection for each one of his victims. In his final court appearance, he thanked the
That
judge.
doesn't even make sense. What, they're going to lethally inject him 14 times?
They do that just in case something gets overturned. That's why he also got the 147 years on top of the death by lethal injection in the case before that. You have to guarantee justice is going to happen.
Yeah.
And in his final court appearance, he thanked the judge for his sentence, saying that death was the only suitable justice for what he had done. So a little side weirdness, other inmates on death row tried to kill him on multiple occasions, not because of his super fucking gross crimes, but because he was refusing to appeal his death sentence. And they were concerned that this could set a precedent which would make their appeals more difficult. But after one close call, false alarm, where his death was rescheduled, it was actually so close that he had already eaten his last meal. Future president, then governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, signed his second death warrant on May 31st of 1990, set for June the 25th. This was the fastest instance of conviction to
Clinton
execution.
body count, am I right?
That's a really funny one, Kelly.
But Dasha.
That is true. That you did pull a straight up Dasha. We'll be talking about that in episode 299. The fastest instance of conviction to execution in U.S. history since it was reinstated in 1976. On that day, he walked into the execution chamber saying, quote, "Justice delayed, finally be done, is justifiable homicide." It took 17 minutes until Ronald was declared dead. The state held onto his body for a bit, waiting for family to claim it. But he didn't really have much family left.
He fucking killed all of them.
Yeah, and he was buried in a common grave in Star City, Arkansas. That's Ronald Gene Simmons, folks. Ooh.
Oh.
You want to see some fun pictures of Ronald Gene Simmons real quick?
No.
Maybe with
Rather
his family.
not.
Here's some. There he is there. Here's the whole family hanging out together. She's got a Disneyland sweater. Maybe they went to Disneyland once.
Great.
And there's their I guess, collective tombstone. A lot of names on that thing. Yeah. Well, see, that wasn't too bad, was it? How long was that?
It was horrible.
Well,
yeah, you just ruined everybody's day.
I didn't ruin anyone's day.
Night. You're right. It's night.
Good
You've
correction.
done worse, but this was not cool.
Before this story, Kelly, tell him. Like, I told you several times, first of all, turn your camera on. I don't know where you disappeared to.
I'm distraught.
I see you there. No, I looked for a very long time for an alternate story, because when I committed to this,
Byron, what is your segment called?
It's called Byron's Serial Corner, but I wanted to do something less family annihilator than this. 16 is a lot of dead bodies.
Is the alternate story that he writes, "I want to rock and roll all night"? Like, what's the alternate?
Well, I'm saying I wanted a story that wasn't this one. I wanted a different tale. But we've covered the Covina Massacre. We did that one where that family died and all those presents got left in their abandoned house for a long time. We've done the Sauter family. I just there was nothing left. So I'm happy to say that Ronald Gene Simmons is out of my brain. We can move on until next year when I have to come up with another one of these fucking things. But
you could just pivot, Byron. You could go.
What's my new brand?
In a different direction.
I'm not gonna talk about the fucking squonk every week.
I really prefer the squonk.
I will guarantee you in 2022 I will do another cryptid, and that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, wow. Ronald Gene Simmons, huh? You've been listening to an Audio Wool original, produced by Byron McKoy, theme music provided by Cemeteries. For more programs like this, visit audiowall.co.